Today we look at 5 mostly forgotten 80s bands on Music Meanderings. This is Mike Lamneck. Welcome to Music Meanderings. Today we're going to look at 5, I guess, mostly forgotten 80s bands. Perhaps you remember them. I remember these, but you don't hear a lot about them these days. And the first one on the list is Fine Young Cannibals. Fine Young Cannibals, English pop rock band from Birmingham, England, formed in 1984 by former The Beat Band bassist David Steele, along with guitarist Andy Cox, and the frontman, singer Roland Gift. Now, their self-titled 1985 debut contained Johnny Come Home and a pretty good cover of Elvis's Suspicious Minds as well. I wore that cassette out during the 80s. The album was big with those two hits going top 40 in the UK, Canada, Australia, and Europe. And their 1989 breakthrough album, that was The Raw and the Cooked. Of course, you remember the monster MTV and radio hit, She Drives Me Crazy. Also, the follow-up hit, Good Thing. Both of those top in the US, UK, Australian, and Canadian album charts. They were never to generate the same results again, though. Fine Young Cannibals disbanded in 1992, although they did briefly return to the studio in 1996 to record a new single called The Flame that they added to their greatest hits compilation called The Finest. One of my favorite bands from the 80s for sure, and that is Haircut 100. British pop, I guess, jazz group. There's a lot of jazz in their music. Formed in 1980 in London by Nick Hayward, Les Neames, and Graham Jones. Hayward left after the stellar 1982 debut album Pelican West that featured the top 10 UK singles Favorite Shirts, Love Plus One, and Fantastic Day. Now, as a result, the band's percussionist, Mark Fox, had to assume the lead vocal duties on their second album. Just wasn't the same. Unlike the band's first album, Paint and Paint, the follow-up was not a commercial success and failed to chart. None of the singles released from it reached the UK top 40. The band, however, featuring their classic lineup, toured in 2024 as the opening act for 80s acts ABC and Howard Jones. And such a great 80s album. One of my favorites. If you don't own it, check it out. And that's Haircut 100 and Pelican West. Well, another rock band from London, England, founded in 1979. The band's 80s hits include One Thing Leads to Another, Saved by Zero, Are We Ourselves, and Secret Separation. Can you name that band just from those hits? It's The Fix. Each of those songs charted the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100, as well as mainstream rock charts. And Red Skies, Stand or Fall were album rock hits. The classic album, Reach the Beach, became the group's most commercially successful album, certified platinum in 1984. Reach the Beach, fantastic album by The Fix. In fact, 2 members of The Fix played on Tina Turner's hit Better Be Good to Me from her 1984 comeback album Private Dancer. The band released a critically acclaimed Every 5 Seconds in 2022. That was their first album in 10 years. And they have a 2025 tour starting in May in the UK. Well, a rock trio formed in 1984 that had really one big hit, a song called Your Love. Talking about The Outfield. They exploded onto the scene in the mid-1980s with that hit. The band's original lineup consisting of guitarist John Spinks, vocalist and bassist Tony Lewis, and drummer Alan Jackman. They had an unusual experience for a British band. They enjoyed commercial success in the U.S., but never in their homeland. The Outfield released that first album, Played Deep, in 1984 through Columbia Records. It reached number 9 on the Billboard 200 album chart and reached double platinum status in the U.S. on the strength of that single, Your Love, which became their signature song. The band continued to record and tour through the 1980s into the early 1990s. 1987's Bangin', 1989's Voices of Babylon saw some chart success, but they never could quite again equal that huge debut. The Outfield continued to tour and released 3 albums in the 90s and 3 more albums in the 2000s, with their final one being 2011's Replay. Songwriter, vocalist, guitarist Spinks died from liver cancer shortly after its release. Well, if you hear the riff, you know it. It's the Romantics. What I Like About You. Kind of hard to escape that in the 80s, 90s, and right to today. That song is still heard all the time. The Romantics, hailing from Detroit. They put kind of a pop spin on garage rock and punk rock in the 80s. According to their official website bio, the original members, Wally Palmer, Jimmy Marinos, Mike Skill, and Rich Cole, became a band on Valentine's Day in 1977, hence the name The Romantics. Their sound and leather look was a big hit on radio and MTV. Songs like, of course, What I Like About You, Talking in Your Sleep, One in a Million. The instantly recognizable lead-in riff to What I Like About You is still a staple on radio, isn't it? And even at stadiums during ball games today. Many of the band's songs had a formulaic sound, which made it kind of hard to distinguish one from the other. I remember seeing them in concert at a small club in the 90s. And of course, the one song that most people at that show knew by the Romantics was What I Like About You. And about every lead-in riff to every song had that similar sound, and the crowd would start cheering loudly when they played it, and then you would really hear kind of a letdown after that when they figured out it wasn't What I Like About You. In fact, I think they saved that song for the encore. On their official website, theromanticsdetroit.com, the band recently announced that due to an unforeseen medical situation, they would be unable to perform at 2025's Totally Tubular tour this summer. Well, there's 5 80s bands. How many of those do you remember? Fine Young Cannibals, Haircut 100, The Fix, The Outfield, The Romantics. And go ahead and comment below, what are some 80s forgotten bands? And subscribe to the channel. This is Music Meanderings. Thanks for joining us today.